And do you think Doug remembers that? I hope so.
Oh, good.
I was worried about being yeah, the original in the Hudson Valley. It was Judy. I think so. I don't know. Yes, hi. Yes, I know you met
The whole family.
Yes. Met before.
Many years ago. Lynn Henderson plays for Linda's here. Lynn Charney is like Lynn Henderson is the accompanist.
So you're the guy playing.
No, yes, she's a cabaret performer.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Yes, thank you for coming out. I'm David Regano. Thank you so much for coming to the Drama Bookshop tonight for our talk on How to Survive a Killer Musical by Douglas J. Cohen. I'm going to read you a little quick bit about, I know most of you are here because you already know this information, but I'm going to read it to you anyway, that Douglas Cohen is a composer, lyricist, and librettist. He is the recipient of 2 Richard Rogers Awards, a Jonathan Larson Grant, a Drama Desk and Drama League nominations, the Fred Ebb Award. I could go on with the awards that he's won. His works have been produced off-Broadway, regional, we're talking about Williamstown's signature Goodspeed, and the studio album for his score, The Big Time, is scheduled for, it says here it's scheduled for a 2023 release, and I believe that is Friday, this Friday, and on your way out, I'll remind you again, but you're all going to get a code that you can scan to hear that new musical. And today, I have to talk about someone else who's also on our shelves. Peter Felicia is going to be here doing the moderation for this event, and a little bit about this esteemed musical theater writer, critic, historian. Peter has written for Playbill, Theater Mania, Broadway Select, The Star Ledger, and other publications, along with 6 other books, one of which is in my hand and on our shelves in the theater history section right here. So, if you will please kindly join me in welcoming Douglas J. Cohen and Peter Felicia.
Irving Berlin lied when he wrote in There's No Business Like Show Business, everything about it is appealing. Perhaps he wrote appalling and this typist got it wrong. But nothing illustrates the ups and downs and downs and downs and downs and ups and downs and downs as much as this book, which I truly believe is one of the great theater books of all time. When my beloved Linda heard about this book, she said, "Oh, is it a how-to book?" Because it says how-to in the title. Well, you know, in a strange way, it is a how-to book, because anybody who wants to write for the theater really should learn from this book about the ups and downs and downs and downs and ups. And who better to tell us than a person who lived it as Douglas J. Cohen. All right, this is about No Way to Treat a Lady. Your first interaction with it? Did you read the book? Did you see the movie? What was it?
I saw the movie. As I say in the book, I was doing laundry, and I think I lived alone at the time. Is this on? Yes, you can hear it?
You need to bring it closer.
Oh, do I need to take it?
Bring it closer.
Oh, okay, bring it close to see. I was doing laundry, and I just turned on this black and white TV. It was a long time ago. This was in like 1984 or 5, and I saw this movie. It had just kind of started, because I remember the credits were rolling, and I was very intrigued, and I'd known about this film because I saw the trailer when I was young, and remembered Lee Remick being pursued by Rod Steiger with these beaded, you know, those 60s beads that used to hang from people's doors. And that terrorized me. But now I was older and sat down to watch this film, and I just thought it was the perfect vehicle to musicalize.
So you actually was starting to think about doing it right then and there.
Yes, I started writing songs, like when Mo meets, her name was Kate Palmer in the movie, that she was Sarah Stone in the book. I've started actually writing So Far So Good. I mean, these tunes just came, yeah.
All right, now, where do you get William Goldman's information to get in touch with him?
So that was an interesting story because he actually was one of the few people I knew in the business. I wrote a show back in 1983 with Susan DeLallo, who was the lyricist, and somebody by the name of Norman Klein, who had a theater, the Emlyn Theater.
Sure.
So, in fact, when he came to us, we thought, great, he's a guy with a theater, why not write a show? At least we know we'll get produced. And we put together this little review. It was not very notable, and we did 6 performances, once every Wednesday night, I think it was. The particular night, so there was one cast member, Terry Berenger, who knew Bill Goldman's wife, Eileen. And because of that, he came to see the show with his wife on the only night the show actually took fire. It was a dud of a show. But there was one night that it actually worked, and it had nothing to do with the show itself except that there were paintings hung around the inner circle. It was also like an art gallery, and one of the paintings fell, and it fell right behind the pianist blocking the actor's entrance. So they had to, I think it was Ron Orbach, had to come out and pick up the painting. He kind of sashayed off with it, and the audience was absolutely in the palm of their hand. And by the time the show started, we had a hit. And that was the night he was there, and I brought his book, The Adventures in the Screen Trade, and he signed it to Doug. It was thrilling. God bless.
All right, now theatrical rights. Did he have them? Did the studio have them? Did the publisher have them?
Well, I went after, I didn't even know to ask those things.
Oh.
You know, I just assumed he would have the theatrical rights because he wrote the book. But the thing is, after I badgered him, and there was a real period of seduction, I don't think you can categorize it any other way, but I was just absolutely like, you know, a dog with a bone. I found out after this very important presentation which he attended that he called me the next day and said, oh, it turns out I have the theatrical rights. So all this time I was meeting with him and playing him things, and it could have been that Paramount Pictures had the theatrical rights, and then I would have had to go to Paramount.
Well, now there you were a member of the ASCAP workshop, and you did a presentation, and you invited him.
I did.
Were you, before it started, were you saying, I shouldn't have done this, I did the right thing, what? I mean, how nervous were you, or were you nervous at all, saying, nah, he's gonna love it?
Yeah, I was very confident because he'd already come to my apartment to hear some songs, although he was not exactly encouraging. He liked the songs, he just thought the idea was really odd. And I later read his book, and I now know why he thought that, because the book is very, very brutal and dark, and would not have interested me if that was my first exposure to the material. But I responded to the movie's tone, and then in my mind I just said, okay, find that in the book, and you know, a little darkness doesn't hurt, but I mean, we're talking about the leading lady was brutally murdered 2/3 of the way through the book. So that was something that you don't want to necessarily build a musical comedy around. You know? But anyway, so you were asking about his
The night
reluctance.
that you did the
Yes.
presentation.
So he told me, this was around the June, that he was not going to discourage me, but he couldn't encourage me. And I wrote in the book, in my mind, of a young person, 25 years old, I took that as a vote of confidence.
Everybody has to go through stages like that.
You just selectively take out the things that do not support that theory, And I just assumed he was saying, he said, I can't stop you, but if you want to continue this, we can discuss this after Labor Day. And I just thought he's saying, see you in September. And then I got into ASCAP with this project, the ASCAP Musical Theater Workshop. And I immediately called him and he said, Doug, I thought I told you not to write that show. I said, no, you didn't. You said, you'd rather I not write the show. But you didn't say I couldn't, and I have, and I got in, and it's opening night at ASCAP, and I really hope you'll be there. And that's when he looked through his book and he said, okay, I'll be there. And
How much of you believed he would be there?
well, when he said he would come, I sort of saw that as a very promising sign.
Okay.
He wasn't the sort of person to break dates.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So he shows up.
He shows up.
Who's your singer?
But, he shows up, but he gives me instructions. I did have the meltdown shortly before, went to his apartment. I called him on a payphone, went to his apartment, and he said, okay, so why are you here? And I said, because it's Monday, this was like Friday, and I'm just so afraid that if I bomb at this workshop, you'll never give me the rights. And he said, oh, don't worry about that. Whether you succeed or not has nothing to do with the fact if I give you the rights or not. So I thought that was kind of unsettling. Because I really thought that if I were to do spectacularly well, I should be at least awarded something, right? But no, according to him, that was not really in the cards necessarily. So he just said, oh, one more thing. This is as I was walking to the elevator. I'd rather you not let anyone know I'm there. So I had to keep the secret. And we talked about him, and the whole panel discussed him while he was in the room.
The panel included?
Charles Strauss, who was always there. He was the leader at that time of the ASCAP Musical Theater Workshop. Burton Lane, Daniel's Rainbow, Clear Day. Stephen Schwartz, maybe you might also know, and the leading theater critic at that time, Frank Rich. I was the final show.
Who did the presentation?
Well, that was, yes, those were some people that you may know. So there was an actress named Mary Testa. She played Mars's mother, Flora Brummel. There was a guy named Michael Byers who, I don't really know what he's done, but he did do a very key scene in Postcards from the Edge. He played Kit Gill. Mary did also the song Still. And then there was a newcomer named Jason Alexander. Yeah. And Frank had just reviewed him in personals and didn't like the show. This was an off-Broadway show, but cited Jason as one of the key reasons to see it. So I knew that was an ace in the hole there. Yeah.
But Stephen Schwartz wrote some personals, didn't he? And he was sitting there with
He
Frank
did,
Rich.
yes. But, all's fair in love and war.
I see. All right, so what does Frank Rich say?
Frank was the second to speak. I think Stephen led. And Stephen was very complimentary. And Stephen Schwartz doesn't give away like gratuitous compliments, but he was critical, but he was mostly very positive. Mm-hmm. And Frank,
So far, so good.
yes, exactly. And Frank was very positive. He had some thoughts which he shared. He's very generous about that. And it wasn't like a slam dunk, but I think he said of all the shows presented tonight, this is the one I would most like to see.
Mm-hmm. He did. I was there too.
And Charles, Burton Lane, he was a man of few words. He's like thumbs up kind of guy. But he really liked it.
Maybe a thesaurus would help.
And then Charles, who had been really hard on me for the 2 years prior. Do you remember that first night? Oh, God. And he always said, you need to dig deeper. And I always took that as a personal insult, but he was really just trying to encourage me. And he loved it. He was really good. So.
All right, so the next day, what happens?
So I see Bill Goldman at the event, and of course I can't acknowledge who he is. He's very tall. And I said, I hope you enjoyed tonight. He said, yeah, And I said, I'm really sorry if they said anything that, they talked about him as if he didn't exist. And I think at one point they said, well, it's not one of his better works and things like that. And the next day I called him. He said to call him the next day, and I did. And he said, okay, so it turns out I do have the theatrical rights. why don't you speak to my lawyer, have your lawyer call my lawyer. And he said to me, I know you can't afford to take an option, so I'm just going to ask for a third. Which, you think that sounds like a lot? I didn't think it sounded like too much, because I really, if he had said, I'll take 50%, I would have said, sure. I just wanted to do it.
The other thing, too, is that most people in his position would say, I want the money up front,
Yeah.
because nothing's going to come of this. So it was a vote of confidence in another way, wasn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. He never took an option, a monetary option. Yeah.
So we heard about all your awards before this started, and one of them was for No Way to Treat a Lady, 2 of them, 3, how many?
Well, I only won the Richard Rogers Award.
Okay, and that entitled you to
A workshop.
where?
At the Hudson Guild.
Okay.
In fact, I called Bill Goldman. I was so happy, and he said, "That's great, Doug. What is it?" And the Hudson Guild. Do any of you remember the Hudson Guild?
Sure.
I know, Marie and Bill do. Yeah, Michael. It was a great little theater on West 26th Street. It's still there, but they had a season just like Playwrights Horizons
Absolutely.
and
On
MTC.
Golden Pulse.
On Golden Pulse. Stop. Yeah. And Joe Mantello was an actor in the play right before No Way to Treat a Lady called Crackwalker. So they had amazing people. Polly Draper was in a play there. Anyway, I liked them so much. They were very unpretentious there, and we got this Richard Rogers grant, and we cast it, and 2 members of the cast.
And they are?
Peter Marks, who was Peter Slutzker, and Steve Burns.
Yeah. So obviously you got along with them. I mean, here they are.
Yeah.
All right, so who's going to direct?
So Jack Hofstas got the job, but it was not as easy as that, because I interviewed 4 people. Paul Lazarus was someone I knew, and he was a rising director who had just done Personals off-Broadway, and had also directed a piece that David Crane of Marta Kaufman, David Crane of Friends, he directed that off-Broadway, got great review in the New York Times. And I had also known him through my friend Tom Tost, and when Paul turned 30, they threw this big party for him, and Tom and I wrote a song, and Stephen Sondheim was there, and he gave me a really nice compliment. So that stood out in my mind, and like, Paul's someone who's really on the cusp of something, and he was smart. And Kathy and I were in London in 1984, just walking around, and we ran into Paul, and we became the best of friends, and like took in all the sights together. And so I had a real nice rapport with him, and he was very thorough in analyzing the show. Jack Hofstas was my agent's client, and he had directed Elephant Man on Broadway and had won the Tony Award. He was the youngest director at that time. I don't know if that record's been broken. He won it at 28. And he had this wonderful career ahead of him, and had a horrible accident on Fire Island where he dove into a swimming pool and broke his neck. So he was a quadriplegic, and we had a great conversation on the phone. I remember I said to him, "So who do you think the leading character is?" And he said, "It's Kit Gill, the killer." I said, "Really? Why would you say that?" And he said, "Because he's the most interesting." And I thought, well, that's actually probably true, but I don't think he's the protagonist. And then I had Jeffrey Sherman, who was the producing artistic director of the Hudson Guild. I always say that he was my safety school. And then I had Robert Jess Roth, who was this young guy who ran up to me as soon as ASCAP was over that night and said, "I'm Rob Roth, I read shows at Playwrights Horizons, and this is better than any of the shit I read, and here's my card." And so he was always asking, "What are you writing? Can I hear it?" And he would have great comments and input, and so I regarded him as someone that I thought was, a rising star. But I also knew no one knew who he was. He had a great reference from Martin Gottfried, though, because he had directed William Finn's work at college, along with Roger Bart, who was in his class, and Kevin Chamberlain. So he was in good company. But anyway, I chose Paul, and Paul's agent was supposed to convey that information, and we waited 3 days, and he never did. And
Do we know why?
I don't know why, except
To
that
this
Paul.
day.
No, I don't. I don't really know what happened there. I mean, Paul was directing a show in Atlanta, and it was a really tough gig. And when he came back, he sounded exhausted. I called him, and I conveyed the news, and he never even said, "Oh, that's great." He just said, "Oh, I don't know why I don't know this. I don't know why I'm going to have to talk to my agent." So that wasn't very promising. In the meantime, Jeffrey Sherman, the producing artistic director, had already conveyed to Jack Hotsis that he didn't get the job. So now I didn't even have a number 2, right? And I had to kind of nicely grovel, and my agent also paved the way. And ultimately he took on the job. And he was a lovely man. I mean, you guys can attest, he just the best sense of humor.
One of the most poignant lines in the show, in the book, deals with his accident and how he couldn't react to your music the way you'd like him to, and that is.
Yeah, I would sometimes look at him and say, and wouldn't it be great if you could just tap his toes,
But it wasn't to be.
No.
All right, so you run Thoughts Guild, you're successful, nice things are happening. What happens next?
Well, nice things that were happening, but the show didn't move
Mhm.
because the New York Times review was great on Steve Bogartis. It was a love letter
You're
to
so
Steve.
smart.
And it was very good on me in the last paragraph, but it just wasn't a ray for the show, although it had these 2 quotes that I later look at and think, why didn't we run with them? It said like a bouquet-sized Sweeney Todd with a dash of Psycho. I mean, that's a great quote, I mean, I Love You Perfect ran just by saying Seinfeld to music, so.
That's right.
But anyway, yeah, we didn't move. We didn't get a cast album. All those wonderful perks that I'd hoped for. But I did run a full-page ad in Variety with the help of Jeffrey Richards, who was our publicist at the time. He's now a major producer. And it caught the attention of Richard Hopkins at the Florida Studio Theater. And he was the next call.
Now, there was a problem at this theater at one point, wasn't it? Is this the place where the actress got stabbed?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine. An actress got stabbed, so there was no understudy who could do it? So
Yeah,
who
I
did
have
it?
to explain, it's not like just, she fell on a kitchen knife. I mean, she was surprised by an intruder. Adam Grouper was rooming with her, and one other person, Mary Baird, and he went out that night, and this guy was, I think, a crack addict, and he crept in through the screen window and surprised her in the kitchen with a knife. And she had a lot of money on her, but it looked like $1 bills, and he kept slashing. And she had the presence of mind to say, "What have you done with Mary, who had just arrived?" He turned in that direction, and she made a beeline for the exit and went outside and started screaming. And they thought she was going to be fine, but he had punctured her pericardium, right, her heart sac. And her blood pressure was just dropping. And there was fortunately a cardiology convention in Sarasota. And they alerted them, and they all came and saved her life. And actually, it's a really interesting thing, because Richard called me and relayed all this in a single phone call. I was in New York, and he said, "So who do we have for the role?" And
Who did they have?
I said, please call Judy Bro. She has done all these workshop readings, presentations that we did with Jason and Steve and Mary Testa. And she had auditioned, and he said, "Okay, find out if she can get here in 24 hours.
Could she?
She did. She flew down there. She's here tonight. She was there in 24 hours.
Right.
She uprooted her whole life. And then the woman in the hospital got wind of it and said, I'm well enough to do this role." And Judy had to fly back within 48 hours, I think.
But she recovered.
Oh well.
Now, did you keep a journal all along the way, or was it a case that you just remembered?
No, I did. I never was the sort of person who would keep journals when I was young. My sister was very good at that, and I remember she would always like have this little key and lock it away and all that. But I never did that, and then I went to summer theater and I did 9 musicals in 11 weeks, and I thought maybe this would be a good time to keep a record. And it was a very important journal for me. It was my first taste of competition and defeat. I was actually known as a dancer there. Anyone who knows me, I find that rather surprising. But I was not known as a singer, and I just kind of had to kind of figure out what I was going to do next, because I knew that a performing life was probably not going to crystallize. And it was there that I kind of bared my soul in this diary. And when Bill Goldman came to my apartment to hear those songs, I just knew that I wanted to put this down in a document. And from then on, I just was religious about it. And my mother would often say to me, "Are you writing this down?" You know, because I was so harried with the rehearsals and everything that I never seemed to have the time. But she said, "No, you should do it." So I made a point of doing it.
Mother knows best.
She does.
So, there's one Tony Award director that you're dealing with, and now you're going to deal with another one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
why aren't you smiling?
no, I mean, there's a whole section of my life that's known as Leatherhead. And I think if for some reason I don't live to be the expected age, it'll probably be because Leatherhead consumed like 5 years of my life in totality. I mean, it was a great rite of passage because it was the first time I was truly on my own. I went out there. Do you remember Side by Sondheim? So David Kernan, who was one of the performers in that, was Tony nominated. He was a producer, and he chose No Way to Treat a Lady, along with these 2 women, Doris Carr and Barbara Bonfili. And I didn't know until I got there that they were mother and daughter. They never advertised it, and they looked nothing alike. But that was the trio, and they were looking for a director who had some cred, who would then be able to take the show from Leatherhead, which was the Thorndike Theater in Leatherhead, named after Dame Sybil Thorndike, and move it to the West End.
Mm-hmm.
And they found Vivian Madelon, who was living in the Village in New York, and had won a Tony Award for Mornings at 7, and directed Brigadoon on Broadway, and several other things too. I got along very well with Vivian. We seemed to be eye to eye on everything, but he had nothing but disdain for our producers. And on the very first day, he said in a very loud tones, "Amateurs. They're amateurs." And he never changed that position.
All right, so you have a very good leading man in Martin Smith, right?
Yes. You're hitting a lot of the big things. Yeah, there was a really wonderful actor who was in our show, and he got cast to stand with the opera on the West End and had to leave our show if it had transferred. But he was supposed to stay for the run of the show, and I did something that really pissed him off. And I don't, still to this day, understand what I did exactly, but there was a button, and I mean, a lot of you probably know I'm very particular about my buttons. I like the buttons because you get applause. And there was a button that was kind of a half button. It was at the end of the song called Lunch with Sarah. And I spoke to the MD, and she said, "Oh yeah, we'll ask the percussionist to put in a kettle drum button." And that's what happened that night. And it was in the blackout. And after the show, he went ballistic at me. He said, "I'm not doing the show anymore." Basically, he quit. They said, "You're doing it." And I had to run to the train station, pursuing him, trying to get him to stay for the remainder of the run. And I groveled. I really did grovel. But it's all in the book. But it was, it was something which I had no choice. I mean, he was maybe overreacting, but as I later learned, he also had a lot of things that he was dealing with at the time. So I'm going to definitely be give him the benefit of the doubt.
And David Kernan wants to go away for the weekend, right?
Oh yeah, so that's David Kernan was very, very focused on the show, but when we had our first run through, he asked if we could postpone it because it was a bank holiday weekend. So it showed you where his priorities were.
There's a very interesting thing about a platform that.
This is not in the book, yeah, but it's something I discovered later. I mean, there was so much lunacy going on with this production. It really will read, in some ways, like Noises Off. Because this little theater in Leatherhead, their great claim to fame was that they did Stepping Out. And that's nice that they launched it, but that's like a very easy show to produce. And they probably asked people to bring their own tap shoes. You know? They had a global budget for us, and everything had to fall within the global budget. And it's the first time in my life where I've heard that sound is actually costumes. But that's where they put it. Your question was about the
platform.
The platforms, yes. So the day after we opened, they told us that because Kit died in Alexandra's arms, the killer dies in his mother's arms, and he was on a 6-inch platform, that it looked like the Pietà and that he was going to ascend to heaven, and they insisted that we remove it, so the next day Vivian supervised them sawing the platform in half, so it was now 3 inches.
Makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
For a while there, Jerry Gutierrez was interested too, another big name, right? You were going to do it at the
Yeah. Well, there's a whole story that comes before that too, because we had a major. I mean, I think he was a wonderful director.
Sure.
Had a huge impact on the show. Encouraged me to write "I Need a Life," Lonnie Price, and we were supposed to do a New York commercial production in 1994, but Lonnie decided at that point that he was going to immerse himself in soap operas. He was being groomed. So we were without a director, and we had about 2 weeks to find one because the American Place Theater had offered us their space. So the clock was ticking madly, and we were looking at everyone. Rob Marshall, I mean, Graziella Danielle. We were just going through lists of people, and it was kind of strange to think that nobody really was not on that list. It was just everyone. It was the who's who of theater, and Jerry and I got along very well, but he just did not like the idea of not having time to prepare for this. But it was a wonderful, short-lived relationship.
Now, tell us about Robert Michael Baker.
God, I'm giving away so much. Do you think they'll still want to buy the book?
Absolutely. Now they don't have to read.
Well, it's just, there's so many things that happen with the show. People that are indisposed, people that inexplicably leave. We got a reprieve because there was this group called Favored Nations. And they were all these major performers: Audra McDonald, Maren Maisie, Jonathan Freeman, Burke Moses. They were all in shows currently on the boards, and they wanted to flex their muscles. So they got together, and they would do pieces, like presentations of shows, or a night of different songs, new songs for shows. And we had 2 songs in one of those presentations. And it went so well that they said, we want to do No Way to True Lady. And Maren Maisie was Sarah, and Jason Gra was Mo, and Brian Stokes Mitchell was Kit. And I don't think there was a Flora because she wasn't in the 2 songs. As soon as we got the date, Maren was busy, Jason was busy. Karen Ziemba stepped in, Robert Michael Baker stepped in, and Barbara Tyrrell, if she's here. I don't know if she's here. She was the 4th person. And she told me, because I was at Goodspeed doing, I think, the gig or Glimmerglass, but she told me, it's going great, but I never see these people. It's very rare because we only come when we have time and no one's being paid. So you just have to kind of, you work a little with Gabe Barry and then the music director. Well, they reserved the last 2 days to actually rehearse the show. And I saw it on the penultimate day, and they still were kind of learning the music. And I said something to Gabe, I'm a little concerned. He goes, don't worry, we've got a whole huge chunk of time tomorrow before the reading begins at 3. But then he also told me that Robert Michael Baker was he was requested to be in court with his ex-wife in Connecticut and could not come to the theater until they were squared away with all those litigation stuff. So I was really panicked, and sure enough, he got there probably afternoon, like after 12 o'clock, and our presentation was at 3. So it left them with only 2 hours, and he's in 80% of the show. It was not pretty. It really wasn't.
Speaking of not pretty, there was the time when there was nobody to play Flora at all. And who played Flora?
Give me away.
You could take the 5th.
I could take the 5th. Well, let me just say that there was a production in Cohoes that was directed by David Holgrive, who's now David Armstrong. And great cast, Adam Grouper, Ray Wills, Kathy Morath. We were hoping for Chita Rivera, but we got Darlene Popovic. And Darlene fell on the 3rd to last performance on stage during the song Still. And Ray was trying to help her, but he actually ended up twisting her arm. Did you ever see Deliverance? You know when like that poor guy has, it looked like that. It was just, you didn't want to watch, it was horrific. So she fell and she was screaming to him, let go, let go, let go. And apparently some ribs were involved and she wasn't at the curtain call. So I facetiously said to David, well, you know, I am available if you need anyone. And he said, no, we're fine. And then they canceled the performance that night. And we were checked into this hotel, and Kathy and I were actually on our way out. We had just presented the key when the phone rang and this woman picked up and said, oh, he's just leaving now. And it was David Holgrive Armstrong on the phone saying, we need you at the theater, you're going on today.
So you had to wear a wig and a dress.
Well, no, it wasn't quite like that because we kind of deconstructed the role. So it was like, okay, this one I'm going to wear a boa, this one I'm going to wear, you know, the robe. In this drag scene, I had to be in drag. How could I not, you know? But Jeremy's never seen that footage, but and we will spare him that. But yeah, I did 2 performances and the matinee and the evening, and I have to say, David said to the audience, if anyone wants their money back in intermission, we'll give it back. That matinee, 2 people did request it. The evening, no one did.
And yet everybody who saw that performance has slept with a nightlight.
One man, true story, one man was late in coming to the theater. He was 15 minutes late. He did not hear the speech that David gave explaining what had happened. And Kathy said he looked absolutely horrified to see this woman with a beard performing the role.
All right, let's take some questions. Anybody have any questions? Nobody?
After that? Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
this one.
man.
Hey Doug, how you doing?
Hey, Doug.
I read the book and I think it's great. I just compliment you. I was struck because I know the show and I saw it at the Hudson Guild. That's where it was first, right?
Yeah.
But then a lot of songs that I really enjoy in it, you really wrote like 5 to 10 years later for other productions. Like it just speaks to your persistence and just how long it takes to make a show good, that you kept working on it. And some of these my favorite moments, are there because of your hard work. So
Thank you. Yeah, it was
say something about that.
Yeah, no. We had a song in New York called Mother Like Sarah that was such a big hit, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Peter slayed him with that song. But it was the moment when Mars brings Sarah, who isn't Jewish, who's kind of like the Shiksa goddess, to meet his Jewish mother. And it was very funny, and there was nice places for dialogue between the 2 women, but they didn't sing a note. It was all Mars's song. And David Kernan kept saying to me, we want a song for the Queens of London. And by that he meant, we want a song that will be like a Kander and Ebb kind of number that will really give the razzle-dazzle treatment. And Vivian said to me, I mean, David was relentless. And Vivian said, I know what you're going through, but just do it. Just go off to a practice room, write the song, and then you can always say, you see, I did it, and it's not any good, or it's good, or whatever. And so I went to a practice room, and I wrote So Much in Common. And it was good. It was, sorry to say, it was better, because the women got a chance to really shine and sing. So that was through our producers. I have to thank them for that. And then there were other things that I just felt. I felt like Killer on the Line. Again, Peter would sing that song and give it everything he got. And it was really, wasn't like pushing a rock up a hill.
Brutal too.
It was really brutal. It was ridiculously brutal. And so I felt energized by this new song, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna do another song for this moment. And I got the idea for Lunch with Sarah, and it's so much better. In fact, it's Charles Strauss's favorite song. I'm sure he told me that.
Yeah.
And then years later, Lonnie Price was assigned, and he didn't like the song 5 More Minutes, which basically was butchered in the Hudson Guild, but got me the rights. That's the song Jason sang at ASCAP. And he said, no, it's, I once did something to it and kind of gave it a little bit more, filled it out a bit more, and he said, it's a perfectly decent BMI song. Which I know is... I don't think he meant it quite as a slight, but it sort of sounded that way. And I think what he really meant was, it's the kind of song that you did everything right, but in reality, if you're going to present that on a stage, don't expect a great response. So he kept pushing me to write something that truly tracked these two men, brought them together from the get-go. And that's when I came up with I Need a Life. And he was very excited about it. And I remember we were very, very proud of that number. And I'm still am. I mean, I just feel like it made a big difference.
How many foreign productions have there been?
Well, one production was in Barcelona because Sylvia,
Yes.
right, directed it, and didn't it win like the big award there?
Yeah, we got like there it's called Butaca.
Wow.
We like the best. We got 4 nominations. We got Best Actor, Best Music of the Year. So it was a big hit.
Oh,
in
that's so
Barcelona.
great.
You never got to come.
You know, my great regret in life, and I don't have too many, but my great regret is that I didn't get to Barcelona. And so please revive it. I mean, listen, I'll put money into this one. Just revive. You don't even have to pay for the option or whatever. Just, I would love to go see
Taking
it.
your word.
Please, please.
There are a lot of witnesses here, too. Did you ever see anything in a foreign production that you said, wow, what a great idea?
Yes, yes. Well, Borgio Verezzi. So if Leatherhead is here, Borgio Verezzi is here, okay? It didn't get better than Borgio Verezzi. It's called Borgio Verezzi because it means when the land meets the sea. And it's this beautiful little town near Portofino in Italy, also near the border with France. And so you live by the sea, and when night falls, you go up this very circuitous route all the way up to the top, where it's like this village that's been there for maybe 500 years. I mean, it looks like it's going to crumble. Hopefully they've done little repairs on it, but it's just something that it's like out of, Indiana Jones. And that's where they set their theater. They have a makeshift stage, and this wonderful director, Gianluca Guidi, who produced it, directed it, and he later starred in it, but this time he didn't. He did this wonderful thing where towards the end when Morris and Sarah are in bed, it's the first time I'd ever seen this, he had the bed vertical. And they were in it with the covers over them, so you saw their faces. And then a year later, Jack O'Brien used it in Hairspray, and then it's been used ad nauseum. But I think we were the first. Yeah, he did some very cool things. He had almost like this elevator thing. It was like the scrim of New York City with various towers, and it felt like a company with Boris Aronson set. Yeah, very innovative. And he also put other instruments to the score. I never heard it except for the 2 tracks that Larry Moore did brilliantly on Broadway Bound. I'd never heard it with more than 5 pieces. And he expanded to an orchestra of 12, and he never paid them again. He recorded them, and then they never performed the show. So he could do that. See, they do that there. But it's not very nice to musicians. But it was great because the sound sounded like they were actually present.
How many countries would you estimate?
Probably 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I haven't gotten to that many of them, but I see a lot of them on YouTube.
What was that, Serial Killer, Parasite?
Yes, Serial Killer,
Which
Parasite.
there's vocal selections.
Yes, the only one that has the vocal select. I've never had published music for the show. They also did their own album. If you keep looking on eBay, you'll find it. It sounds really good. You won't know a word they're saying, but it sounds really good in Italian.
Which brings up a good point. Every now and then you must hear an English word, or a name, a proper name, or something like that, don't you, in some of these recordings?
Oh, sure. It was interesting. I think I was telling you the other day, I saw their gig. The gig was done in Baden-Baden. And there's a line about Pinto, right? You're selling, Bill Perry, you were selling a green Pinto?
Yes.
Lime green, right.
Yes.
And they changed it to like Mercedes.
Very different.
But I would listen. It's interesting, when you know where the laughs are, you just listen for the laughs. And I remember with the gig, I thought they got every laugh but 2. And that really pleased me. And I think they got most of the laughs with No Way to True Lady. They love the Italian mother. That's a big, she's an iconic figure, you know?
Yes, I remember Italian Mother. Yeah. Other questions? There's one.
Has there ever been a high school production?
I don't know too many high schools that are that progressive, but, maybe. I don't think so, but I do know I think there was a community college that's actually streaming during the pandemic. So I did see that one, but a lot of college productions, I think. Yeah, I don't know about high school, but it was very interesting. I did teach at the neighborhood playhouse, and there's an actor there. We were doing a showcase, and his name is Sky Lakota Lynch. Maybe you may know that name. He actually went into Dear Evan Hansen and is now going to originate a role in The Outsiders. And he went to AMDA and he said, there's a song that would be so perfect here. It's called Safer in My Arms. And I said, you do know I wrote that, right? And he said, no. And I said, how do you know that? So I said, AMDA. So thank you, AMDA. They're keeping me alive, I guess.
Kathy Marath. Right?
Yes, and John Zendarczyk. Big shout out.
Other questions? Yeah.
2 questions. Hi.
Yes,
First,
you're in the book.
Yeah.
If you read it, you would know.
This was fun. The first question is why now? Why? What was the inspiration for this book? And the second is, are there any stories that stand out that did not make the cut in the book that you'd like to share?
Right.
No pressure to involve me in them.
Well, the platform thing was interesting. I stumbled upon that story. The reason for writing the book was that I had these journals forever, and I didn't know what to do with them, and they were just gathering dust. And they were interesting. Whenever I looked at them, I just kind of felt like I was dropping into some kind of time capsule, and I just kind of reliving the horror, but also some of the wonderful things that I experienced. And it was during the pandemic. I was watching The Best Worst Thing That Could Have Happened, which is a great documentary about Merrily We Roll Along. I'd seen it at Alice Tully Hall in its premiere, and I was watching it because we had time on our hands during the pandemic. And I started crying. It was very emotional. And I was trying to analyze why it resonated so much, and there were a couple reasons. I mean, one was Lonnie Price, Liz Calloway, Jason Alexander, people I'd worked with on the show. But it was also a period of time. that just was kind of a magical period, you know? And it was a time that I just wanted to revisit, and I felt like it was the time that I first discovered who I was as a writer. And so I decided at that moment that I was going to look at those diaries and try and make something of it and tell my story, because I wasn't getting any younger. People were dying everywhere. I didn't want to sound too morbid, but it just, one's mortality was on the foremost on my mind. There was another reason too, which I kind of call the Pac-Man factor. There's a guy that Dan and I had to raise a little money for Evolution of Man. And that's what we're tasked with. You know, when we write shows, we have to raise money. And I had to raise money for Children's Letters to God. There was a major producer involved. My mother always said to go to this guy, Sonny, who, my mother said, he's done very well. And when my mother used the word very, it was capitalized and underscored. So I would go to Sonny, and he would usually write a check, you know. He did it twice, and I went to him this third time, and he said, you know, you've been doing this for what, like 25, 30 years? I said, yeah, about that. He said, and you're talented, and I know your parents really believe in you, and I don't want to sound harsh, but you haven't made it. And I said, well, it's not really, it's more layered than that. And he said, well, but at the end of the day, you haven't made the big time. And I believe he actually said the big time, which is interesting because I wrote a show, Doug Carradine, called The Big Time. And I started to think that he said the thing that a lot of people were thinking out loud. You know, a lot of people do not understand what it is that artists go through. And they don't know that we have our own specific trajectories, and that we are not the kind of, we don't have the professional route that many people have, where you can attend school and you work really hard, I know that, but you have something at the end that's that carrot that you can actually reach. We go to school like BMI and ASCAP, and that doesn't guarantee us anything except craft. So I wanted outsiders to understand what this one journey was for me, and how it has these sometimes insurmountable challenges that are very different from the lives that they inhabit. I also wanted to write something for insiders, because I think that anyone contemplating a life in the theater, anyone who's currently experiencing a life in the theater, it's interesting for us to share these stories and to see how we do get past these obstacles.
Also in the ASCAP workshop were two men who we'll call Glenn and Paul. Anyway, Glenn had dinner with me one night, and he says, listen, I just got back from Los Angeles, and you know, I'll be frank, I mean, I don't go to porno bookstores in New Jersey where I live because everybody knows me, but I figure I go to Los Angeles, nobody knows me. I go in there, and there's Paul from the ASCAP workshop. And we look at each other, we don't know what to say, and finally one of us says, so what'd you think of Doug Cohen's show? The more interesting part of the story is, whenever I tell it, I get a laugh. But when I said to Doug Cohen that story, he went, ha ha ha, and what did they think of it? Thank you for coming.
Thank you one more time. Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm going to take Doug around the corner where he's going to be signing books, and Mark, our resident Disney World line manager, is going to ask you all to wait here for just a second while he gets you lined up, and he's going to let you know exactly where you need to go on one row at a time and all of that good stuff. So thank you very much. And we'll see you in the back corner.
Everyone just hang out in your seats for just a brief moment, and I will take you around to some signing.
I'm not saying, I'm just grabbing you.
What are you going to sign?
Broadway down, the fourth edition.
All right, we're gonna-
Schneider shows.
Oh, yeah.
I just gotta call some problems.
Everyone, we're going to go row by row. You've already gone before, so I'm going to take you guys, if you guys have signed.
Hardest salute to Tom Jones. Part of the benefit of the Valley Fund.
I will come back for the second row in just a moment. I'll take first row.
Rachel Dratch and John Terry.
Hello, camera.
Hi. Look at those manly men.
That's right. This is right. This is the pre-show.
All right, set up some chairs. I'll open the speakers up real quick. Sorry. They should be up there. Yeah. Hello, hello, how are you? Damn good, what about you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Is Cohen here?
Oops, yes, he's
Okay, man.
Yeah.
This isn't so bad. It scared me for a minute.
I'm a front row person.
Is it okay, Michael?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to piss you off. I just, I'm not going to let something go by. We're doing a recording of something new song he wrote.
But
and I'm
sometimes
pointing
I
out
do rhymes that are from
Totally
verse to
understand.
verse.
It's just when it's been so long until you hear the rhyme, I think
Sometimes I don't like with
I know. I don't mean.
From verse to verse. Do you know that Love We're All the Noel Coward song?
yes.
That has a strange rhyme scheme.
It's
doesn't it?
No, I love that
It's
rhyme
a brilliant
scheme.
rhyme scheme
Yes.
because it's the same. It works within each A, but it
I did that in Elevator Man. Some people commented.
I
did that
like that,
deliberately.
but I got that rhyme scheme. I don't get whatever you did.
I once got a comment at BMI that I just shouldn't bother trying to rhyme across the page. And I was like, if I can, I will.
No,
Sometimes you find rhymes where they really don't belong.
Yeah. And then that gets confusing.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes Michael, you point out places for rhymes that really I do not.
Tell me if you disagree with anything I said.
I'm not going to be in the middle of a rhyme fight.
What?
I said I'm in the middle of like a
Rhyme fight.
rhyme war. A rhyme war.
I was in
I mean, if I rhyme something, it would be.
That's for Linda. That's for you. For you. We're waiting for you.
I'm trying to figure out
Where I can put that.
I've been good. I'm asking for you. He said he almost called me to get together. I was so geeked out. I wanted to come over there. So my place came over a couple of months ago and we had a wonderful afternoon.
And they also, they're very interested.
I've almost called you yesterday to set up a time. Why didn't you guys come? I just got
I'm actually one of the 10 people mentioning it's truly a book.
Oh, really? Oh, so you're one of these very savvy.
I'm a good Googler. I mean, a lot of the questions are ridiculous.
because what he,
Right, you
Ryan,
got it. I can't believe you didn't get the email from
no, I did not get it. Sometimes he doesn't send it.
Well, you know, I showed you my stuff. Totally you sent it.
I mean, let me just put it this way, we found, I mean, we're talking major.
Well, Ron was making it, then I had to just.
I don't know him.
I like it that you know.
some of my plans fell through.
See, I had a lot of. Now we have to figure this out.
Do you mind if I just get you in the show?
I can flip one of the shit lines from it. I think I want to write it.
As long as you're good.
She is. She's still working. Thank you. I don't think that was smear. Hopefully not.
I'll save your carpal tunnel, but I just wanted to say hi.
Good to see you.
Michael.
Yes, yes, yes.
I love that show in Boston. I love the
Oh,
gigs so much.
thank you.
You all right?
So both of them,
Don't worry.
right across the street. Oh, wow. And did I? Oh my God, of course.
So I bring chicken on this Sunday.
I saw you. I know you know. So good to see you. Oh, thank you. Do you live in New York now?
I came here like a month ago and I was just trying to see if my son was good and I visited the family in Minnesota.
It's SILGIA.
I used to complain, I said,
Yeah, I'm not kidding. I was thinking next year is going to be the 20th anniversary of the introduction.
Oh, wow. So
actually, it's up to you. Maybe we could just.
oh, I would love that.
We should do some competing. I used to compete.
I just play better now. I mean, you know, like Sean Hayes. Yes. Yes, or I'll give you my card.
Please.
I'll just say next year.
Do you want to hold the book up?
Oh, yes. Good. You're in.
I've done one or two of these.
Oh, it's a signed copy. And it is. Let me give you that card. He was great. I remember. How are you? Thank you. So do you. You don't age.
Did you turn 50?
So am I. Yeah, no. What are we doing? We're doing something, right? Of course. With pleasure. I'm so curious to know what you think of the whole section. Yeah.
I'll let you know.
Because it's going to be different.
Trash me in it?
No, I don't trash you.
Why would you trash me? Was I standing up straight or not?
You were a little hunched over. But it's okay.
We'll see. Good. How you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Michael Stever.
No,
I'm trying to remember where she's supposed to More importantly,
I don't know.
do me a favor, hold on to this for me and tell me how you and Doug.
Doug and I.
Wait.
I got a phone call. Apparently, Jason Alexander became unavailable to do this show because he got the Neil Simon show.
Oh, you're that guy.
And Jason told Doug and I guess Jack Hofstas to call me. And my name was Peter Slutzker back then, and I had just done Singing in the Rain. I was the Donald O'Connor part in Singing in the Rain. And that's, so I went in and they loved me, thank God, and I got the part. So there you go.
The rest is history.
So, and the rest is history. And when I was in LA, I helped Doug with the gig, and I did the Benny Goodman song. He's got a song, Benny Goodman. I did a huge tap dance to it. So that was really fun.
Very cool.
So yeah, love Doug.
Awesome, buddy. Thank you. Good seeing you.
Nice seeing you.
Likewise. Likewise. Great
Yes.
to see you. Really fantastic to see you. I'll talk.
Go for it. What's in your heart?
My heart is No Way to Treat a Lady because I musically directed a production of it in almost 31 years ago in West Palm Beach. I knew Randy Levine Miller, who lives in my building, was had the rights, the option on it, and she had become a good friend of mine. She hooked me up with Doug, and I played the auditions for it, and Doug had some questions about my piano playing and said, you played Not a Day Goes By and you had some mistakes. I said, yeah, I haven't played that song as much as I should. I was like, but he said, well, I want you to musically direct it. I said, great. And we had a wonderful cast, great people. It was such a pleasure. It was completely sold out, and Steve Ross wrote me and said, I really wanted to see it, but I came through West Palm Beach, but it was all sold out. I said, I would have gotten you in, but I got my parents in, and my parents were willing to pay for, they wanted to invest in it in the future because we're such fans of the show, and I loved playing it. I've known Doug since then. Doug and I then flew out to Portland, Oregon to see a production of it, the first non-equity production in Portland, Oregon, later that same year, 93. So I feel it's such a close show to me. Very different from what it became at the York because they cut songs, added new songs, stuff like that. But I love it. It's great.
Awesome, buddy. Good seeing you, man. Will do. Stay cool out there.
So I say this was love, but then the shakes
You were so wonderful I'm telling you, the stories were great. But you know what? He's here too. We're here too. What I love is hearing all the other stuff that was going on. As a composer, and he's like, enough about me. What do you think about me? But it's just the steps forward and the steps back, and I really can't wait because Peter did not, reveal everything. So I really can't wait to see all.
And your son is home.
Yes, he started college.
Wow.
Yeah, he's at St. John's. So he told us he's majoring in Homeland Security. Now we can all sleep.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Mazel tov. Thank you. Wonderful.
Hi.
Thanks
Michael.
Hi, Michael.
The receipt.
Takes 30 seconds.
Oh,
So
sure.
just together. Hold on to this phone.
Okay. Hey.
Off the cuff.
Off the cuff.
How do you know that? You got some grease paint under your brain.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to be involved with the William Morris readings with Jason Alexander and Mary Testa before there was actually a real stage production. And because the woman got stabbed in the actors' housing at Florida Studio Theater, I was the one that was called to come in and replace her. But as Doug said, as soon as she found out that there was somebody coming to replace her, she became an actoire again. She was resurrected. It was a miracle. It's a miracle. And so that close to going on and doing it. But Doug and I have been intersecting our paths through lots of other ways to his father, who was a rabbi, had written a wonderful book called The Drunkenness of Noah, and he wanted to get it republished before his father passed away. He was in his 90s, and so I helped him proofread it and put in the appropriate Hebrew letters, and so it's been a chance for me to re-meet him since I've left the business a long time ago. It was another way for us to interact in a whole other area of his life. Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah.
The book got out there and
yeah, it's out there. Unfortunately, his father did not live long enough to see the new edition, but it is a beautiful new edition, and very proud.
you can see it on the other side.
I know he has read it on the other side. He's quelling up in the Gan Eden, as we say. And this is my husband, Howard Panhasic, and he's an actor, and he's watched me go through all this stuff too.
Thank you much.
Did not know that there had been these productions. So congratulations.
I would love that.
All right.
Hey. Oh my God, Louise, good to see you. How are you? Of course. Sure. I was really pleased when I saw you.
Long time.
So excited.
Thank you very much.
I'll see you again here.
Please pop in anytime.
All right. That's wonderful.
There you go.
Congrats. It was one night. Today's presentation was wonderful.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's so good to see you. Hey, Lawrence.
I know
Of course. Send me a text to see if you're available. Oh, what you do a testimonial?
Of course.
Oh, come on.
How'd you meet?
This. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, you're in your testimonial.
Come close.
Okay.
What's in your heart?
This is so exciting. I've known Doug for 40 years. We met at BMI, and when we were young whippersnaps. And I've followed his career, and it's so wonderful. I can't wait to read it. So it's very exciting, and he's wonderful as a talent and as a person. So.
You and he are two bubbling creative forces of nature.
Absolutely. They bubbled up in all of us. Great to see you.
Nice to meet you.
I'll send you a text.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks, Lawrence. Hi.
John.
Oh my God. Good to see you. It's been a long time. It's so great to see you. Thank you.